The adventurous story begins with a man named Cobb lying by the riverbank. After a while, when Cobb regains consciousness, he finds two security guards standing in front of him. They lift him up and take him to a chamber. Inside this luxurious chamber, an old man named Saito is present, who instructs the security guards to thoroughly check Cobb. Saito finds a gun and a small spinning top in Cobb's pants. The surprising thing is that when Saito holds the spinning top, he says that he has been searching for a man who possesses this top for many years, and now he might finally succeed in his mission. Saito spins the little top right there. At this point, Cobb is conversing with Saito because he needs to extract some important information. In reality, this entire place is not the real world, but a dream world. Cobb wants to get the information out of Saito's mind while in this dream world. However, Saito already knows what Cobb is going to do. Therefore, Cobb quickly tries to escape from the dream world to save his life. Cobb finds himself on a metro with his companions. Meanwhile, Saito is still in the dream world, unaware of what has happened. Before Saito wakes up, Cobb and his companions manage to leave the place. But soon after, when Saito regains consciousness, he learns about everything that happened. Now, Saito approaches Cobb and reveals something very important. In fact, Saito had already known that Cobb was extracting important information from his mind in the dream world, and Saito was simply testing him. He tells Cobb that he needs his help with an important task. Saito asks Cobb for help with something vital. He tells Cobb that he and his team are skilled at entering people's dreams and influencing things. Therefore, Cobb has to carry out a task for him, which involves entering a businessman's dream and implanting an important idea in it. In other words, Cobb must include certain things in the businessman's dream that he would believe to be true, and which would eventually become possible in reality. When Cobb hears this, he expresses concern, saying that this task could be very dangerous. Because adding anything to someone's dreams could be very dangerous, Cobb initially refuses Saito's offer and attempts to leave. However, Saito asks him, "Don't you want to go back to your children in another country?" It turns out that Cobb is accused of having taken his wife's life, and he cannot return to his children in another country because he would be caught at the airport and imprisoned. But Saito clarifies that his influence reaches high up, and if he wanted to, he could help Cobb reach his country. In exchange for this, Cobb would have to do one thing for Saito. Saito has a very old business competitor who is now quite old. Cobb's task would be to enter this old businessman's son's dream and plant ideas that his father should dissolve all his companies. So the rival business would not perform well, and Saito's company could become the #1 company. After much deliberation, Cobb has no other option but to take up the task if he wants to reach his children. So, Cobb, along with his team, decides to carry out Saito's plan. Cobb sets out to recruit more people for his team. Cobb and his team are well aware of how to enter the dream world, which is like a strange dimension where entire cities can be imagined and created. Cobb's job has always been to enter people's dreams and extract important, confidential information from their minds. However, this mission seems much more difficult for Cobb and his team. Cobb sometimes gets so absorbed in the dream world that he loses track of whether he is in the real world or still in the dream world. That's why everyone carries an object that helps them distinguish between the two worlds. Cobb, for example, has a small spinning top. If the top continues spinning indefinitely, it means he is in the dream world, but if it eventually stops, it means he is in the real world. Cobb and his team need to take special injections to enter the dream world. These injections have precise timing. They allow them to stay in the dream world for a set amount of time before they are pulled back to the real world. However, if anyone dies in the dream world, they wake up before the time is up. Using this knowledge, Cobb and his team engage in various heists within the dream world. But now, following Saito's instructions, Cobb must enter the dream of the businessman's son and implant certain ideas that will make him believe he should not expand his father's company. Though this task seems simple, it is anything but. Cobb knows very well that Saito has powerful connections, and he could get the murder charges against Cobb, regarding his wife's death, dropped if he chooses to. This is why Cobb agrees to help Saito with the plan. To build his team, Cobb first visits his father-in-law, who is a physics teacher. Cobb tells him that he needs a good architect who can assist him in the dream world. After much discussion, his father-in-law introduces him to Mary, an architecture student. Cobb explains to Mary how they will enter the dream world and how she needs to use her imagination and creativity to create various architectural designs within that world. Initially, Mary is quite nervous, but as she focuses on her imagination, she begins to transform an entire city, creating a new world. Cobb is impressed by her abilities and decides to add her to his team. However, while Cobb and Mary are in the dream world, something unexpected happens. Cobb's wife appears and kills Mary. After dying in the dream world, Mary wakes up in the real world. This incident makes Cobb realize that anything can happen in the dream world, and they must create a foolproof plan to succeed in their mission. Cobb then calls in the rest of his team to discuss these new developments. Cobb informs his team that they will enter the dream world and go up to the third level. The first level of the dream world is where their journey will begin. In the real world, they will only sleep for 10 hours, but in the dream world, they will have an entire week. Their task on the first level will be to make the businessman's son realize that he should not follow in his father's footsteps and should not expand his father's company. Once this level is completed, they will go back to sleep in the first level, which will allow them to enter the second level of the dream world. However, the second level is much more complicated. On the first level, they get 1 week, which translates to 6 years in the second level. However, in reality, they are only asleep for 10 hours. In the second level, their task will be to make the businessman's son realize that he should start something of his own, so he won't focus on his father's company. Once this level is completed, they will go back to sleep in the second level, which will give them more time to enter the third level. In the third level, their task will be to make the businessman's son believe that his father doesn't love him at all and that his father doesn't even want him to be the successor of his company. After carefully planning all of this, Cobb's team is ready for the mission. They also have various sedative drugs to help them fall asleep and enter the dream world. The team boards a private plane, where the businessman's son is also present. Cobb cunningly mixes sedatives in the drinks and serves them to the businessman's son. After drinking, the businessman's son falls into a deep sleep. Cobb and his team then take their own sedatives and quickly enter the dream world. But as they approach the businessman's son in the dream world, they are attacked by the son's many security guards. The businessman's son has some knowledge of the dream world, so he had arranged for tight security within it. The security guards begin attacking Cobb and his team, who are desperately trying to defend themselves and escape. During the attack, Saito is badly injured and begins to suffer intensely. Cobb realizes that the only way to save Saito is to kill him, which would cause Saito to wake up in the real world, saving him from death in the dream world. However, the rest of the team explains to Cobb that they have taken very strong sedative pills. Even if Saito dies in the dream world, he won't wake up quickly in the real world. He might even fall into a coma. In the dream world, if anyone dies, they would automatically fall into a coma in the real world. This makes Cobb realize that they need to be careful and avoid any further deaths to execute their plan. Cobb decides that they will move to the second level of the dream world. To do so, they need to put themselves back to sleep, which will transport them to the second level. Cobb hopes that Saito's pain might lessen in the second level. The rest of the team agrees with Cobb's plan, and they decide to kidnap the businessman. They lock him in a car and gradually move into the second level of the dream world. In the second level, the team needs to make the businessman's son realize that he needs to take control of his life and not just follow in his father's footsteps. Cobb reaches the second level of the dream world and approaches the businessman, who is relaxing in a bar. Cobb tells him that he is in the dream world and that his life is in danger. Cobb wants to convince the businessman that he is on his side and there to help him. The businessman, confused by this revelation, starts to trust Cobb. At that moment, 2 unknown assailants try to kill the businessman, but Cobb bravely intervenes, saving the businessman's life and eliminating the attackers. The businessman then learns that it was his own uncle who was trying to kill him. Cobb tells him that his uncle is trying to steal all of his wealth. However, the businessman still doesn't believe all of this, which is why Cobb tries to convince him further by saying that they need to enter his uncle's dreams to see the truth. After a lot of persuasion, the businessman finally agrees. However, what the businessman doesn't realize is that the one trying to kill him is actually Cobb himself. This was part of Cobb's plan to trap the businessman into believing him. The businessman's uncle, who is trying to kill him, turns out to be none other than one of Cobb's associates, who had taken the form of the uncle. Everything is going according to plan, and now Cobb, along with his team, is preparing to move to the third level of the dream world. This is where they will enter the uncle's dreams and uncover the truth. The team quickly reaches the third level, which appears to be a vast, snowy area. They all open their eyes, and their goal is to reach a large palace located at the peak of a mountain. However, Cobb receives a shocking piece of information from one of his teammates. They only have a few hours left in the third level to complete the mission. Back in the second level, the group in the car has only a few minutes left, and in the first level, the plane they are in is nearing its time limit. If Cobb doesn't complete the mission and return to the real world soon, the plane will land at the airport, and Cobb will be arrested. With this pressure, Cobb and his team hurry to enter the large palace. The businessman, who had found a secret passage to get inside, approaches a massive vault. Somehow, He knows the combination to unlock it. Suddenly, Cobb's wife appears with a gun, pointing it at the businessman. In the next moment, she shoots and kills him. Even though Cobb's wife had died earlier, she still exists in the dream world. Every time Cobb tries to accomplish something in his dreams, she reappears and prevents him. Now, with the businessman dead, the entire plan is in jeopardy. However, despite the businessman's death, he doesn't wake up in the second level. Since the businessman had been given deep sleep medication, he remains in a coma, unable to wake up, even though Cobb's wife had killed him in the dream world. At this point, Cobb starts reflecting on his past with his wife. There was a time when Cobb and his wife were deeply in love, and both shared a fascination with entering the dream world. Together, they explored the first, second, third, and even the fourth levels of dreams, spending what felt like years in these dream worlds, all within a single night in the real world. However, while living in the dream world, Cobb's wife began to believe that this was their true reality. She became convinced that they belonged in the dream world and wanted to remain there forever. Cobb, on the other hand, knew that the dream world was a trap, one that entangled people by feeding their desires. He was determined to save her from this illusion. To help her realize the truth, Cobb entered her dreams and made her understand that the world she was living in was not real and that she had to return to the real world. After Cobb entered her dreams and broke the illusion, his wife awoke in the real world, where Cobb was waiting for her. He was relieved, believing that he had done the right thing. But even after waking up, his wife couldn't accept that the real world was real. She still believed the dream world was where she truly belonged and, despite Cobb's attempts to convince her, she remained fixated on returning to her children in the dream world. In a moment of deep frustration, Cobb's wife wrote a letter accusing him of her murder before tragically jumping from the building, ending her life. This was a devastating event for Cobb, who later faced charges in connection with her death. His lawyer advised him to flee, as all the evidence was stacked against him, and police investigation would inevitably lead to his imprisonment. After this, Cobb fled to another country, constantly on the run. Now, in the third level of the dream world, Cobb is seen deciding how to fix things. This is where he chooses to confront the chaos he and his wife created, deciding to delve into the consciousness they had built together. In this shared dream world, Cobb had spent 50 years, and it is here he believes he can find a way to resolve the turmoil caused by his wife's death and the ongoing mission. Cobb, determined to fix everything, decides to enter the shared consciousness he and his wife had created. In this dream world, he believes he can find a way to resolve the issues with his wife and the businessman. He teams up with Mary, and they enter this consciousness together, a place filled with the memories and moments Cobb had spent with his wife. This world had been built by Cobb and his wife, and now Cobb, alongside Mary, begins navigating this complex, emotional space. They quickly locate Cobb's wife, still trapped in this dream world, and Cobb also finds the businessman. Cobb pushes the businessman off a mountain in this world, a planned act to revive him in the third-level dream world. The businessman, now alive again, begins to wander towards a vault, where he finds his father, who is still alive in this dream world, despite having passed away in the real world. The father is dying, and in his final moments, he speaks to his son, expressing his disappointment. The businessman, deeply emotional, realizes he had tried too hard to follow in his father's footsteps. His father, however, had always wanted him to create his own path and identity. The businessman's father reveals a vault containing the company's will, offering the businessman a share of the family business. But after reflecting on everything, the businessman decides he will not take over his father's company. Instead, he resolves to start his own company and carve out his own identity. With the businessman now convinced to follow his own path, Cobb and his team successfully complete their mission, planting the idea in his mind that he should create his own startup instead of taking over his father's company. Now, with everything going according to plan, Cobb and his team begin to ascend to the next level, preparing to return to the real world. Their mission had been successful, and the businessman's decision to create his own path meant that Cobb and his team had accomplished what they set out to do. But they were not yet done, as they still needed to return to the real world. Cobb and Mary are still trapped in the world of consciousness, and after all the chaos, Mary decides to end it by jumping off a building. After her death, she enters the first level of dreams, a state where Cobb realizes that this is not the real world. He decides to erase all memories of his wife from his conscious mind to break free from the illusion of the dream world. After erasing the memories, Cobb and his team transition from the third level to the second level, where they had been trapped in a car. They are still not out of the illusion, as Cobb believes that Saito, who had been shot earlier, will die in the real world. Cobb searches for Saito, trying to remind him of their deal. One day, while by a river, Cobb is captured by security guards and taken to Saito. However, Saito is now old and has no memory of their deal. At that moment, both Cobb and Saito realize that they are still in the dream world. The next moment, Cobb wakes up in the real world on a plane, surrounded by the businessman and his team. Cobb initially believes that Saito is still in a coma but soon realizes that Saito had also woken up in the real world after both of them died in the second level of dreams. The effects of the sedatives have worn off, and they are now in the real world. Following the deal, Saito calls a high-ranking officer and tells him not to take any action against Cobb, which ensures Cobb's safety. The plane lands at the airport, and Cobb, still unsure, fears that the police might arrest him. However, when he presents his passport, it is immediately approved. Soon, Cobb's father-in-law picks him up and takes him home, where he is reunited with his two children, making him very happy. Despite the joy, Cobb still has doubts about whether he is truly in the real world or still stuck in the dream world. As he interacts with his family, Cobb's uncertainty lingers. Was this all just another level of the dream? The ambiguity of whether he's truly in the real world or still in a constructed dream remains in his mind, leaving the audience with a central question. Is this reality, or is Cobb still dreaming? So, he started spinning his top here. Even though the top was spinning continuously at first, it started to wobble slowly, which confirmed that this entire world was real. After many years, Cobb finally went to his children and started living with them. And that's where this mind-boggling story ends.